This is a Citrus County Planning and Development Commission public hearing for January 20th, 2022. If you would like to join us at this time, I invite you to please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear Lord, please give us the grace to be understanding, patient, and tolerant. With these attributes, we can conduct our work in a manner which will be pleasing to Thee, our county, and its residents. In the Lord's name, amen.
Amen. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If we have the roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Good morning.
The following Planning and Development Commission members are present this morning. Michael Facemeyer, Chair. David Bramblett, First Vice Chair. Robert Bass, Second Vice Chair. James Royce, Kurt Stone, Stacy Worthington, and Carol Scragg, alternate.
Thank you. If any person decides to appeal any decision made by the Commission with respect to any matter considered at this hearing, he or she will need a record of the proceedings, and for such purpose, he or she may need to ensure that a verbatim record of the proceedings is made, which record will include testimony and evidence upon which the appeal is to be based. During the public portion of the meeting, individuals will be given 3 minutes. Representatives of an organization will be given 5 minutes. When anyone wishing to speak comes to the podium, please complete a yellow form and hand it to the recording secretary. Please print your name, address, and the number on the application for which you are speaking. The yellow forms can be found at the podium by the door. If representing an organization, a letter of authorization must accompany the speaker. Comments will be limited to the topics being heard. Please state your name, spell your last name, and give your address for the taped record. This is an opportunity for the public to address the Commission on any items that they wish. We will discuss specific applications later in the meeting, but now's the time for you to speak on any topic. Seeing no one, I will close the public portion of the meeting. We have minutes from August 19th, 2021. I'll entertain a motion for the approval of those minutes.
Motion.
Motion by Commissioner Bramlett.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Bass. Are there corrections or additions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Staff announcements.
No staff announcements, but I'll go on the absence of the county attorney to ex parte communication. If any of you have any ex parte communication on application CPA PUD 2201, V2202, AA 2201, and CPA AA PUD 2202. We'll start with Ms. Scragg, please.
Site visit 2202.
Thank you.
None.
None?
None. None. None.
None. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Michael, do you have anything?
No, sir, not today.
Thank you. Time for our first application.
Yes, good morning. CPA AA PUD 22-01. This request is designate 108 acres from REC to MDR and to establish a PUD on 354 acres for a residential subdivision. This is an aerial view of the subject property. This is a view of Phase 1 from West Crystal Oaks Drive. This is a view of Phase 2 from West Crystal Oaks Drive. This is looking west and east on West Crystal Oaks Drive. View of Phase 3 and 4 from South Rock Crusher Road. Looking north and south on South Rock Crusher Road. Looking across South Rock Crusher Road. And the master plan submitted by the applicant.
Thank you. Would the applicant please come forward?
Good morning. For the record, my name is Clark Stillwell. Professional address is 320 South Highway 41, the Random Bank Building in Newmarket, Florida. I'm here on behalf of Crystal Ridge Property Group, LLC. I'm not Chuck Pigeon. Mr. Pigeon is here. I point that out because since this matter has been filed, the property is now titled in my client's name. It's noted in your staff report at the very top right-hand corner, but I just point that out initially so you know that this property has been sold and the developer intends to go forward. I'm going to be very brief. Mr. Pigeon is going to follow. He's going to discuss the site plan, and then Avis Craig is going to talk about what I call the 3 C's of planning: consistency, concurrency, and compatibility. Just a brief bit of history. You're talking about a major map and G-film amendment on Rock Crusher Canyon recreational property that's over 100 acres. So this is process is PDC, BCC transmittal hearing, review by state agencies as to that 100 acres, and then back to the BDC. Now, accompanying that is the PUD and the master site plan that you saw. If we could get Ms. Austin, could you put that back up for us? Thank you. To set the stage here, in the MDR district, the authorized land use is primarily residential, either single family, detached or attached, allows for a density of a minimum of 4 acres per unit and up to 8 with a conditional use or PUD. This particular project, without the PUD, and Avis will point that out, and staff report points it out, is well below that authorized density, well below that, which is significant considering the location of the piece, what's around it, and I hope that you give that all the due consideration it is entitled to. The developer could have gone forward with a higher density project and elected not to. When you develop consistent within your district, though, that's the MDR, and the intensity and density meets those standards, the case law is clear that the issue of compatibility has been met. This site, and when I talk about compatibility, I go back to when we did the Rock Crusher Canyon Recreational District. I did that project. Mr. Pigeon's firm, Henniger and Ray, and Avis assisted us. There was a concern about compatibility of that land use at that time in this area. Now, it wasn't as dense at the time, but what we found out over the years with good setbacks and some buffers and some performance standards on the events that occurred there, they were able to be successful without impacting offsite. In the time period when that was very, very active, I can tell you there was never a code enforcement case against that Rock Crusher Canyon for noise or anything else. And I say that because in this particular case, the developer is going to put in open space, buffers, only 2 access points, which I find significant. And that blend in the shape of the lots, internalized shape coming off that road, is going to be that much more compatible with the neighboring land uses than Rock Crusher Canyon was when we did that back in the early 2000s. So with that comment, I'll let Mr. Pigeon take over and discuss the site plan, and then Avis will follow, and then we'll answer any questions you have. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Chuck Pigeon, and thank you for the opportunity to present Crystal Ridge plan development this morning. My address with Pigeon Adora, and the address is 925 Southeast 17th Street, Suite A in Ocala. Not that I like commercials, but I was told to give a few of my credentials for the record. I've been developing and as an engineer in Citrus County since 1981. started and developed and designed Meadowcrest, and we did Black Diamond, then I did most of Citrus Hills, then I did all of Crystal Oaks, then we did all of Crystal Glen, on and on and on and on, and City of Crystal River engineer, City of Inverness engineer, City of Denellen engineer, and worked with a lot of developers to try to form Citrus County into a nice community and that we see today. This is one more piece of the puzzle to go ahead and try to finish a piece of the community that's been, a long-standing area for infill development in this area. I am a professional engineer, and with me here also today was Clark, but the owner of Dix Development, James Dix, is in attendance. Avis Craig, as Clark mentioned, project engineer Linda Pigeon. Others on the project that have helped as far as a team, we have our environmental scientists, we have our traffic engineers, we have our geotechnical engineers as well, and other representatives from the former property ownership in this area. So the presentation today, I'm going to try to keep it brief. Don't intend to go into the detail of the staff report. The staff will address those particular details, but I'll be glad to answer any questions or go into any detail that you want to on any parts that we talk about. So if you wouldn't mind, just the next slide. So Dix Developments is the developer of the property. Just a little bit about Dix Development. Their overall general philosophy is to discover properties in Central Florida, identify that they are proper properties for development. Then they enter and produce the designs for those projects, and that's where I come in and our assistance to the team. And then they develop them and manage through the development process until it's a completed community, turn it over to a homeowners association or a community development district, and then they'll continue to move through Florida as a responsible developer. Next slide, or should I do this? Should I do this?
No, it's not PowerPoint.
Okay, all right. So just generally, to give you a kind of an aerial perspective, from an airplane's view, I think you're all familiar where Crystal Ridge is proposed to be, but this helps to see in relationship where Cinnamon Ridge is to the south and to the east. Not fully developed. There's still some more property there that could be developed in Cinnamon Ridge. Crystal Oaks, which is the Hunter's Ridge closest to that property to the north. Kind of in the middle, surrounding the Rock Crusher Canyon RV Park. There's a significant property to the west, which is undeveloped, which is the Cunningham property, and also some future development property, perhaps to the west. And then just kind of southeast is the school, the Rock Crusher Elementary School. And they own a pretty substantial piece of property to the south that's undeveloped, north and west of the school. So in that perspective, you can see where the Rock Crusher Canyon former entertainment area was. We got some buildings there and parking. We've got another slide to show a little bit better what that is. But before you go, just back up a little bit. So just to reiterate, this development overall mentioned it was 354 acres. It was the former Rock Crusher quarry. It was an active quarry before the 70s. It was also a GTE satellite station when GTE had their big station there. It's now been since removed. And then it was in the Rock Crusher pavilions and canyon entertainment area. The terrain itself is a sandhill ridge. It goes from the sandhill, which runs across the center of the county, north-south, and then it transitions into the flat plains. Basically, Rock Crusher Road is kind of the transition between the sandhills and the flat plains. And that's pretty much why that road was originally put there years and years ago. Most of the site is wooded, although there's some cleared areas that you can see. And then the major collector roads, there's one to the north and one to the west, which we mentioned, Rock Crusher Canyon, Rock Crusher Road, and then Crystal Oaks Drive. So next slide, please. So just take you back in time, 1970, this is what it used to look like right after they stopped mining. A lot of open space, a lot of exposed lime rock, all the white characteristics of Lime Rock. Vistas, you could stand and look into the canyon. There's the lake was there and still there. But that's kind of what it looked like back in the 70s. Now today, several years later, next slide, it's a lot more overgrown. A lot of trees have grown up when you expose that lime rock and you expose some of those minerals and things. It has the fertilizers and soil, so a lot of oak trees start to grow and it starts to revegetate, trying to get back to a natural state, although it's not a natural state for the area just because the natural state is sandhill type vegetation, scrubs, pine, dwarf oaks, post oaks, those type of things. So what we see here now is some vegetation that would be good to salvage and retain around the lakes and around that area, which is more oak trees and more things you see in a lower lying plains area. So next slide. Just a little bit about the existing facilities. We know that there's the larger prefab steel building that's there, which is used for a lot of entertainment type venue areas, parking. You can see at the kind of the top middle was the outdoor amphitheater where we'd have the concert shows. Most of the, I think the last actual large Mike Hampton concert was done back in 2013. So it's been about 10 years since the last large concert. There's been a few other smaller concerts there and then some venues inside the building, but that's all ceased. Unfortunately, that's kind of the history that's behind us now, and it's not to happen out there anymore. So that's kind of the impervious area and the buildings and the things that are there that would get retooled. Next slide. This is the portion east of the canyon area. It's the real top of the sandhill. Again, just to give you the area of the undeveloped property, most of it's either scrub or some open areas. And you can see a lot of sandy areas, so the soils are not good agricultural soils, and it's a typical Central Ridge area. You also see the perspectives of the Crystal Oaks development to the north and the Cinnamon Ridge development to the east and south. All residential, detached, single-family home. Next slide. Once again, this is a regional infill area. And always slated that as a medium density residential for mobile homes. With this application and as a plan unit development, the designation of mobile homes would completely go away and no more to be considered. Next slide, please. This was the current plan development master plan. The previous one you saw was dated in October. This one's the updated December 27th, based on staff review, staff comments. There's been a few little slight changes. You can see there's a lot more open space green area shown on this map now. We have added a roundabout to the northern end as both traffic calming and also code compliant distance separations between intersections. Predominantly the same, all detached single family housing in here. But total with a 3% allowance, plus or minus 3% of the planned, maximum could be 985 lots. Right now we have 957 planned. The sites themselves would range from like 5,500 square foot lots, which is a traditional typical 50-foot wide lot, up to half-acre estate lots, mainly around the quarry area itself. There'd be community facilities for this development. There's a lot of natural open space areas, complete utilities for underground utilities, a complete stormwater management system, which you can get a sense of some of that there with the blue areas being drainage, retention, and stormwater management, which are not counted in the open space calculation by code. There's internal road networks, as you see, the main road running north and south, which would be the internal minor collector roadway. And then right now it's planned for 4 phases of development. There may be some sub-phases within that. Generally, development takes place in chunks of 100 to 150 lots at a time. So there may be, multiple pieces as this goes through. But from a planning perspective, there's 4 predominant phases to look at from the impacts. Next slide. One of the impacts that are looked at is traffic and traffic operations and study. There was a complete study done, primarily look at intersections and the impacts of those intersections, which in turn gives us information about the segments of roads between the intersections. Luke, transportation consultant engineers, completed that study. We took traffic counts while the school session was in, so we had a good feeling of how many traffic were coming and going, what time of day, AM or PMs. We looked at intersections and the turning movements. So we wanted to get a really good sense of what was happening with Rock Crusher Elementary and all the activity that takes place during the peak hour in that period of time. So there's a complete traffic study in the submittal that staff's reviewed. Next. Just talking about the community a little bit in the open spaces. So if you can move to the next one. So the community itself would have a whole litany of amenities for this project. All developments today, especially planned developments, try to attract the quality of their citizens and activities for the citizens. So this one obviously uses the Rock Crusher Canyon as its main theme and its main attraction of community facilities. So there would be a community building built down in that quarry area where the old GT satellite station building used to be. And it'd be meeting rooms and event rooms and libraries and kitchenette and those type of things, game rooms. There'd be a bathhouse so that people using the lake could shower and wash. And then there'd be a swimming pool facility there. So that the community each didn't have to try to develop and build their own swimming pool. There'd be a community facility. There's a dock at the lake that would remain or be enhanced so that somebody could have the dock. Obviously swimming in the lake and then non-motorized boats and vehicles and kayaks and paddle boards, those type of things. There's trails throughout there. As you saw in the 1970 photo, there'll still be trails in 2000 and moving forward. The structure that's there is intended or planned to be used as a pavilion for family events and nature and picnic huts as well. And then boardwalks. Last but not least, there'll be some active type things around the clubhouse, which would be horseshoes and pickleball courts and that. So the community in general, outside of the community area, there'd be pocket parks, and we'll get back to the master plan, but there's pocket parks throughout the community. Because when you get to an area where there's smaller lots, maybe 50 or 60 foot wide lots, we've left pocket parks where they can walk down the end of the road and have a little park for walking. And then there's a lot of multi-use sidewalks, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Next slide. So open space was one of the things we really looked at, seriously and tried to create as much open space as practical for this development. It is a pretty steep terrain in some areas, so you need to separate homes in order to make up the grade between house pads. You can't just jam them all together. So some of those areas we've tried to spread out. So there's natural green space and open space between a lot of these homes as planned right now. That's why we are at 957 as opposed to, let's say, 1,500 or 2,000. We've taken the terrain into consideration. So we mentioned the Rock Crusher Canyon itself is the largest open space, about 26 acres of left area around the canyon and in the canyon and throughout the area for buffers. The pocket parks I mentioned, and then we have some linear community buffers, for example, along Crystal Oaks Drive, along Rock Crusher Canyon, and other places in the community. Overall, we've been able to attain 14% of the site as open space. And what that translates into is 50 acres of open space, a tremendous amount. You only get those kind of numbers when you build a golf course, which is allowed. We don't have a golf course, but we're taking and using what we can. Here's an example of like a minor collector road where you have a sidewalk on one side, which is more of a multi-trail, multi-use sidewalk, which leaves available green space on the other two sides. So just sort of a perspective of what we're envisioning would be for the collector road, some of the collector road areas. Next slide. This development we talked about have complete infrastructure for drinking water system from Citrus County Utilities, solid waste from the county landfill use and transfer, underground power, fiber optic, and sanitary sewer would be Citrus County Utilities as well. Our vehicle pedestrian facilities will have both collector roadways as well as the neighborhood streets. We plan 2 roundabouts, again for traffic calming, but also to make a sense of arrival and coming into the community, as opposed to a grand community gatehouse. We'll use the roundabout and its landscaping as an entry feature as well. A little example of one there on the slide. We're planning on 8-foot wide multi-use sidewalks, which would be a shared path for both pedestrian and, if necessary, bicyclists. We find that to be a lot better than trying to put multiple 4-foot sidewalks everywhere. We didn't want this to look like an urban street in a city. We wanted it to look like a community, sort of a complete streets approach. So you'd still have walking, and it encourages pedestrians to walk on an 8-foot wide trail, feel safer and a little further away, as opposed to the 4-foot wide. Sometimes the 4-foot wide, they want to walk in the street anyway. So we've given them opportunity to feel safe and be off the road. Most intersections, there's 3 major intersections. Those will all have turn lanes, some left, some right, and some both for that. That's all been done in the traffic study. And then lastly, we have some trails and some off-road paths and things getting to through the community. A couple of typical sections there to look at, just showing the 8-foot wide multi-use sidewalk on one side of the collector roadway. Next. Just a little last slide here, just on some of the existing natural features we're trying to maintain and save. For example, there's a 50-foot wide buffer all along the Rock Crusher Canyon RV Park. That's right adjacent to this property. We will still have some buffering, but as an example, 3 of those sides are already covered with a pretty substantial buffer. We will have other buffers itself along the collector roadways, along the wetland buffers, along the man-made lake that's down at the quarry, and then throughout. Landscaping itself, we'd follow all the Florida-friendly landscape package type criteria for the residential homes, for the landscaping of entrances, and try to keep it, low drought type tolerant plantings and natural to this area of the county. And as I mentioned, the entrances would all be landscaped, very compatible with the adjacent developments. And with that, I think that wraps it up, and we're glad to answer any particular questions. Avis will be coming up next to talk about some of the planning aspects, and then we'll be glad to answer any questions after staff's report, if you have any.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Commissioner Worthington has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Pigeon. Just could you clarify, I think the county's contention regarding open space is that it would not include buffers and recreational facilities. Does your 14% include those, or is it without those?
Well, because we don't have the final design yet of the community facilities, a portion of that 26 acres may include some of the open space around the community building. So we don't know if the community building will take up perhaps 1 acre of land area or not. So to answer the question is, the 26 acres is a kind of a conservative number of everything in and around that quarry area. So if you want to say the community building is 1 acre, let's call it 25 acres. So to answer your question, no, it did not exclude what may be around the community building.
So it might be less than 14%?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have a few for
Mr. Bass.
But let me just phrase that the developer has committed to 14%. We will make that happen somehow. We may have to lose some lots. We may have to take some of the 80, 70 foot wide lots and try to squish those down to smaller size to leave a little green space over on the corner of the block. Some of those things we may have to do. We prefer not to have to do those, but we're prepared to do that.
Commissioner Bass.
looking at your master plan, on the phase 1, you have a short road on the left-hand side up near the top that does not have a cul-de-sac. Is there any reason why you do not have a cul-de-sac on that short stretch? in the upper left-hand corner of that parcel, just below the blue detention area. You have a very short street there with no cul-de-sac.
Okay. Correct. That was less than, I believe, 150 feet, and that was for emergency access purposes only. And it was interconnecting, you know, a platted, if I understood you right, sir, it's the one in Phase 1, north, left-hand corner?
Yep.
Yes, sir. That was an interconnected road between a platted county street and the internal residential, so there's no required cul-de-sac on that stretch of road.
Okay. Does that also hold true for on the lower right-hand corner, just below the blue detention area? You also have a segment that doesn't have a cul-de-sac. Is that the same thing? It's a emergency access and connects into an adjacent subdivision?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And that was put there to line up with what appears to be a future road connection that was established over in the Cinnamon Ridge property.
Okay. Also, you have two access points on South Rock Crusher Road. You have the main access that leads into the roundabout, and then you have a second access just to the north of that. Does that access really have to be there? It's not serving that many homes. It would seem to me it would be just as prudent to have only a single access onto South Rock Crusher Road.
Well, again, you know, we always look at the code. If you have more than 100 homes, it's safe to have two entrances. One may be, used when the other isn't. So we felt it was important to have it there, not knowing exactly how each phase is going to develop out in truly with rooftops and buildings. It may be developed in terms of platting, but then this may be a more popular area for rooftops. So we felt that from a good planning perspective, it was better to have two access points, a major and a minor, just in case something happened to the major.
Okay. And you said that the lots are going to be a minimum of 5,500 square feet?
Yes, with a 50-foot wide lot.
Okay. Also, you have a modified cul-de-sac that you are proposing. Will that be able to adequately handle a county fire engine that would be going through there? Have you looked into that from your design perspective?
Yes. We looked at the internal radiuses to handle fire and solid waste.
Okay. And I think that's all I had for Mr. Pigeon at this time. One more question. Maybe this might even turn out to be for Mr. Stillwell, but there was a comment regarding the possibility of having to do expansions to the solid waste or the sewer system. If your development pushes this to the point where the work needs to be done before the county gets there, is your development ready to make those enhancements? It's a letter that you received on 9/15/2021. If you want to go back and look and answer me afterwards, that's fine.
Yeah, as far as staff report, yes, we're evaluating the off-site sewer systems right now and the impact of this development. And we know there is a lift station at the corner of Rock Crusher, and we're evaluating that, pump upgrades, electrical upgrades, whatever. So we're looking at that. Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from the board? Thank you, Mr. Pigeon.
Thank you. I'm going to introduce Avis Craig.
Good morning and Happy New Year.
Good morning.
Let me pass this on to staff. And for the record, my name is Avis Marie Craig. I'm a planning consultant. Address P.O. Box 568, Lecanto, Florida. And I've been before you before. You know that I have an extensive background in both real estate and development and planning. It's kind of interesting to come back around the corner here and work with associates I worked with back in the 80s when I was with Henniger and Ray. And so I have over 35 years of experience and 15 to 20 years in the both real estate and development industry, particularly on the permitting side of the house. And I did serve as the county's first planning director before entering the consulting and development industry. You've heard Chuck go over the overall project characteristics of approximately just under 350 acres, and that it's located with access from Rock Crusher Road as well as Crystal Oaks Drive, and then westbound turns into Venable. I think it's also important to remember proximity, that we're just west of the new Suncoast Parkway, imminently to open this first quarter of 2022. The site, as was explained, sits adjacent across Rock Crusher from the Rock Crusher Elementary. Now, the planning, according to the staff report, is 2.7 acres. I want you to remember that number because that is a very low density, both in terms of what the plan allows, the Land Development Code, for low LDR and MDR designated properties. Mr. Pigeon also mentioned the fact that one of the real positive benefits of this is the fact that currently this property, much of it, the residential areas, allow mobile homes. That will go away completely with the approval of this project if you are so inclined to do so. And that means that the neighbors have the assurance that they're going to be residing adjacent to other single-family homes of a high marketable value. And so when the plan allows 6 to 8 units per acre, remember that 2.7. Now, 35% of the site, as Mr. Pigeon explained, was the former Rock Crusher Entertainment Complex. That's the only portion that is going through, if you will, a comprehensive plan change to bring it into the residential category. And so the rest of the site is already residential and will stay residential. The Ldc Atlas Amendment that has been submitted also includes, and the final piece is, if you will, an overlay over the entire property as a planned unit development. That's really important because, as I indicated, there's no request to increase densities here. And so the master plan locks in the number of units going forward, not only for the county, but also for the neighboring communities and their residents. Furthermore, I think it's also worth reviewing, and I don't know if it's in the staff's PowerPoint, but if you looked at your code designations on the adjoining property, 30% of that is other what's called PDR developments. And that's the area known as Stonegate, platted as West Chase, the first part of it, Hunter's Ridge within Crystal Oaks, and Cinnamon Ridge. They're all planned communities, and that's what this request is for. Now, Mr. Stillwell talked about consistency and compatibility. From a planning perspective, in order to approve a development project, which in this case includes a portion of the site under the CPA to change recreation to MDR, but I've already mentioned to you the deletion of mobile homes. We've clearly shown in the full application, which I know you were all received copies of, on pages 31 and 32, and that's backed up by the staff's report on compatibility and consistency with the comprehensive plan. That's vitally important here. And in the staff report, it's on page 3 of 13 of their report. The Crystal Ridge plan meets the definitional standards of, quote, compatibility under state law 163-3164, subsection 9, which reads, it means a condition in which land uses or conditions can coexist in relative proximity to each other in a stable fashion over time, such that no use or condition is unduly negatively impacted, directly or indirectly, by any other use. This area was planned for residential density of even a higher intensity, and that is something that the adjacent residents can take advantage of, that it is less dense than it could have been planned for. That makes it compatible with the character, single-family homes of the surrounding areas and neighborhood. And so, as I indicated, 30% of the actual linear frontage, if you were to run around this property, are similarly designated planned development for single-family homes. Now, market conditions are always changing, and demand today is for the smaller lot for less maintenance. And if that weren't so, we wouldn't have the number of projects that are underway throughout our Central Ridge that are utilizing this model of development site. Some with even much smaller lots than what we're talking about on this project. This project has been carefully designed. I appreciate you were asking good engineering questions, sir, a few minutes ago, because the team had a solid engineering input, particularly on traffic. And that's why the submittal was done, so that you could have assurance moving into formal development that the roadways, both Rock Crusher and Crystal Oaks, could handle the traffic that would be associated with this project. The site being served by Central Water, it is located in the planned service area, which means this is the area the county is encouraging development to take place. Mr. Pigeon talked a bit about the passive recreation and open space that they've been working over time from the original submitted plan to the plan that was submitted in preparation for this hearing to increase that. And I cannot understate enough, 50 acres is a tremendous amount of open space. Let me give you an example. Terra Vista has 2,300 units. Do you know what they have over there? 40 acres. And remember that ultimately the homeowners have to step up through whatever vehicle, whether it's, as Mr. Pigeon said, a CDD or a homeowners association. They have to absorb the responsibility to upkeep all of that land. And so what I think we're starting to see with this emphasis on 20% open space is a potential problem that as you increase larger sites, you start to get excessive amounts of open space being required. Even Meadowcrest just down the street, which was regarded in the late 80s and 90s when it was built as a premier community, only has 15 acres. We're talking 50 acres on this site. I want you to please remember that as well. So as a result, from a compatibility standpoint, a consistency standpoint, with both the comprehensive plan and the surrounding neighborhood, this site is clearly suited for the development and repurposes a defunct entertainment complex to a more viable economic use, which will be beneficial to the community as a whole. Planned home values are expected to be consistent, if not even more favorable than those in surrounding development, master plan communities. And so, as you see this area continue to build out, it will be no different than other master planned communities that have adjacency to different size lot profiles as is planned here. And so clearly, I think the case has been made, and I would say to you, as in my professional planning experience and opinion, that this project has met the tests which are necessary for you to be able to move this project forward, we hope, to the County Commission with a recommendation for approval, because it complies with the county's comprehensive plan policies and has worked, and the team has worked diligently to work with your staff all of the different departments that will review this project. And I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Questions from the board?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Scragg?
On the lots that are 50 feet wide,
Right?
and if there's a minimum frontage is 20 feet, will those lots have homes that have 2-car garages? Because 20 feet doesn't allow more than 1 car, so if it only has a 1-car garage, you're gonna have people parking all over the street.
There is a depth component to that as well, not just width. And so I think that if you were to drive up into Terra Vista, you would see 40 and 50-foot lots throughout the villa neighborhoods up there. It is not a difficult thing to,
But they all have 2-car garages.
yes.
Okay, so the question is, will these all also?
I am not involved in the house product selection, but I would be very surprised if it was anything less than a 2-car garage. Chuck, can you speak to that, or perhaps?
Let me just add, there'll be 2-car garages, but we don't have the final designs. There's 900 lots, the markets change. We understand a 20-foot setback is the minimum, and that's enough for a single vehicle. If you have a 1-car garage, you may have one parked in the garage, one out. There's community standards, and there's going to be homeowner association criteria. We don't want to see a bunch of cars parking in a bunch of driveways. So where possible, the 50-foot wide is designed for a 40-foot wide home, which is traditionally a larger home than what's mostly out there. Sometimes they're 30s, 35s, 45s. That accommodates a 2-car garage. So a 50-foot wide lot is designed to accommodate a 2-car garage. I just can't tell you that every single lot will have a 2-car garage, but it's going to be what people want to buy. And this development, I intend, and I think most people would want a 2-car garage and get one, or they'll buy someplace else.
Correct. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions?
Any other questions?
Thank you, Ms. Craig.
Thank you.
Good morning again. I just want to speak generally to the question you posed, Ms. Worthington, on open space. The policy in question is policy 1715-11, I believe, and it talks about open space standards outside of the PSA and open space standards inside of the PSA. The text clearly states that the county, through its LDC, will adopt open space standards for residential development inside of the PSA. And then it goes on and has a litany of things that are to be considered open space or not to be open space. That policy has been there since 1990, and your code does not implement it. In other words, there is no LDC standard on open space. The LDC doesn't define open space. It speaks to open space in only 3 categories, and that's mobile home parks, recreational areas, and RV parks. And in the case of a mobile home park, you get credit for the drainage retention areas, and you get credit for the buffers. And policy 1714, which precedes that open space standard, talks about open space as a part of the character of our community, and it defines open space, trees, wetlands, environmentally sensitive areas, and another criteria. In this particular site, 3 of those criteria don't exist. So I would say to you, absent a land development code provision that implements those policies as required by the text, they become guidelines, if you will. And if you were to consider, say, the multi-use trail is designed to get people out and use it for open space, walking, biking, hiking, whatever, that would be something you should properly should consider. There is this internal inconsistency that if this was a mobile home park, we would get credit for the drainage retention areas, which would push it probably much closer to 20%. So it's a question of, I think, try to meet that guideline, and then the quality of what you're providing has to be considered too. Anything else?
Any other questions from the board? Questions from staff?
Yes, thank you. First of all, as far as ownership, I'll tell you that the ownership information that they're talking about, the change came in after the quasi-judicial deadline. That's why it's not reflected in your staff report. We haven't even looked at it because we cannot. It's not able to be considered for this hearing. We were surprised as anyone to see Mr. Stillwell walk up to the podium. He's not been included in any of our correspondence or discussions on this application, but now that we're aware, we certainly will have him on future applications. So as far as we know, this is the owner on the staff report, but they have given something that we'll look at for future meetings. I wanted to clarify, I thought I misheard, but then I'm looking at the slide on the screen, and maybe I didn't. The master plan shows 957 units. The table on the master plan says 957, but that slide, and I know Mr. Pigeon mentioned 985. Was it trying to demonstrate that's what may be allowed with density? Or are we asking for something different?
All right, it's 957 units, and then what Mr. Pigeon has done, and try to give you a perspective, is if you approve the PUD, you can do an administrative change on intensity and density up to 3%. So if you take 3% of 957, that gets you to 985, and that's the maximum potential density. So that's the purpose of that number.
Okay, so when we have a condition, if this gets approved of 957, that's really what you're asking for at this time?
And yes, and implicit in that is the ability administratively to add 3%.
Understood, which is in the
Yeah.
code. Okay, and also another thing on that screen, it says 5,500 square foot lots, whereas everything that we've seen on the plans have been 5,000. And he also mentioned 55 minimum lot width, whereas we had 50. Is it changed to 5,500 or is it 5,000?
So this is where the point where the gentleman that came in midway through the application process, me,
I'm looking at you at the podium, but no, I know
defers
Mr. Pigeon
Mr.
may be able to.
Pigeon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Either way, just clarify so we can get these conditions correct.
We'll clarify minimum lot width 50,
Okay.
and I'm not sure what you're referring to where it says a 5,000 square foot.
Yeah,
in
the
our
5,000's on the master plan table, but this slide says 5,500. I know you mentioned 5,500.
Okay.
Just want to make it clear.
Okay, to clear, yes. The
5,500 is what you're asking
Absolute
for.
minimum would be 50 foot wide, 5,000 square foot based on the PUD master plan.
5,000. Okay. All right. Thank you. You did turn in, whoever wants to answer, a new site plan on the night of the quasi-judicial deadline. So staff has not reflected that in our staff report. So if we could go over very quickly some of the conditions that changed based on your new submittal. You do have a copy of this in your packet, but because of when it was turned in, we've not reviewed it in writing. So any reflections in the conditions that talk about October 25th would now change to December 29th. You heard the minimum lot width, those are fine. Maximum lot coverage they're asking for had been 65%, and now I think you're asking for 50%. I wanted to clarify that too with, I think it's Mr. Pigeon.
To clarify that, we
The
still...
maximum lot coverage had originally said 65, and your new resubmittal cover page talks about 50% plat wide when you look at the entire plat, entire basically subdivision. It's not really plat wide, but development wide.
Correct. When you look at the entire 354 acres,
Mm-hmm.
and you include all the open space, and you include everything else, it would be closer to 50% impervious area.
So
Individual lots, we were thinking more in terms of 65%. So we wanted to stay with the 65%,
what, 65? Okay.
but understanding.
I'm trying to ask you, I was
Yes.
going to ask you how, if you had any concerns with the conditions, but first I wanted to correct what I already know you're going to have questions about. Condition number 10, talking about sidewalks, you have addressed that with your new submittal, so I think condition number 10 about sidewalks would disappear. It would default to what you have on your master plan. Condition number 11 is a very long condition, all dealing with engineering concerns, and most of your submittal did address those engineering concerns. So I think we're down to, instead of condition number 11 with about a page of concerns from them, basically the site must meet the standards of the Land Development Code or Comprehensive Plan unless otherwise authorized by the county engineer. I think the remaining two items that they have to discuss with you are the intersections on Rock Crusher, which Mr. Bass did talk about briefly, and the alternative design for a cul-de-sac. So do you have any concern with changing condition 11, removing all that 8,000 pages and changing it to must meet the conditions unless otherwise authorized by the county engineer? And we understand those two areas are still in discussion.
Correct.
Okay. And I think we took care of the number of lots. That was the other one. So did you have any concerns on any of the other conditions? Because I know the board is going to want to know that before we do our presentation. So there would be 13 conditions now with the removal of condition number 10.
Just back to condition number 5. What is staff's comment on condition 5?
Right, condition number 5 with the open space, staff cannot, it's a comprehensive plan policy. We'll talk about that. I understand you've addressed that in so have some of your presentation. So condition 5 says demonstrate provision for active recreation, which frankly you've done with your new submittal, and open space shall be increased to 20%, cannot include constructed drainage or active recreation uses or similar uses, and that references that policy. I understand you're asking, you don't want to do that. But as far as any other conditions, do you have any concern?
I believe we're fine.
Okay. I knew you'd ask me that, so I thought I'd go ahead and get it done. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Time to hear from staff.
Okay.
Bless you.
Thank you.
All right, this application is a very large one. It's 354 acres, and you heard a lot of discussion on the during their meeting. This is an aerial. It does wrap around the Rock Crusher RV Park, which they've talked about quite a bit there. The RV park is staying, and the area with the amphitheater and the lake, etc., would be disappearing with this application. And you can see on the aerial it is very heavily wooded. They've talked about a topography change. It does abut Cinnamon Ridge. Cinnamon Ridge is, let's see if I can get that going. Okay, Cinnamon Ridge is over here. It does abut Cinnamon Ridge. This is Crystal Oaks up here, Crystal Oaks Drive. Rock Crusher Elementary is right here. So looking at land use very quickly, they have talked about that as well. The MDR-MH and the LDR-MH would remove the MH designation and be MDR and LDR. They would, however, have the PUD overlay for the master plan. The area labeled Rock Crusher Canyon on this particular site is REC. That is proposed to change, and that would be allowing MDR there. So you've got the comp plan change, and then the area where the land development code would change. And then the RV park would remain. And we wanted to zoom in on a couple of different areas. This is phase 1. This is north of Crystal Oaks Drive. So this particular area is about, has an area of 2.7 dwelling units, excuse me, I'm sorry. I got sidetracked on my own notes, which is never good. All right, there's 4 phases. This is phase 1. Phase 1 up here is 232 dwelling units proposed, and they're asking for 2.9 dwelling units per acre. They could go up to 8 units per acre. They are abutting Cinnamon Ridge. They would come out on Cinnamon Ridge Boulevard. Again, there's nothing here to see. It is all trees. And this is the land use at the current time. Now, one thing I would point out, I'm going to point out about the other phases as well. This is phase 1. So this is what we just talked about. Now, this is the older plan. This is not the one they turned in on December 29th. We did not have time to change the side. But what they have added is a sidewalk all the way up that street. Mr. Bass pointed out an area up there that does not have a cul-de-sac, and that is something they're going to have to address. I agree with you. Engineering will have to look at that. And we're going down to phase 2 and 3 and 4. Now, phase 2 is split into phase 2A and 2B. Now, within platting and within these kind of planned developments, they do have some flex. They might call it 2A and decide to do phase 3 instead of 2A, or split phase 3 into 3 phases, whatever they want. Overall, they have to meet what's outlined in the code. So this is LDR-MH. This is phase 2A and 2B. 2A was 315 dwelling units, and 2B is 181 dwelling units. That is about 3.2 dwelling units per acre and 2.7 dwelling units per acre. Both of those are well within what could be allowed in that particular land use area. And there's putting in the lots on 2A. You can see, again, they've added some collector, a multi-use trail along the entire collector, and they have added a few pocket parks in this particular area. And this is phase 3 and 4. Same thing here. Most of this is what Mr. Bass correctly pointed out is not serving a lot with this access point. It's a very good point. I'm sure engineering is looking at that with them, because one of the items that's still a possible concern is the intersection distance from Crystal Oaks Boulevard and this first roadway here. So let's talk about a few of the conditions. We do have a lot of conditions of approval on this particular application. Many of them were met by their new submittal, including the active recreation. So 957 dwelling units, going with 957 is well within the surrounding area. Cinnamon Ridge, I've pointed out in the staff report, and Crystal Oaks both have a much higher density. This is compatible with that area as far as dwelling units. The one point that they're not meeting is open space. So let's talk about open space a minute. It is a comprehensive plan policy. Although the word policy makes it sound like it's just a guideline. In Florida, in the state of Florida, comprehensive plan policies are rigid. Some of them are written not so rigid. We'll say, unless you do this, or shall be strived for, things like that. This one's not. It's 20% open space. Ms. Worthington, your point was very good about open space and what's included. It can include buffers. It can include landscape buffers, no problem. It can include landscaped areas. It cannot include constructed drainage facilities. If you're digging a DRA and it's entirely green, entirely constructed for drainage, it cannot be included. It can include active recreation. If you're putting up a basketball court, that's not going to be included. If you're putting up a trail, that's not active recreation, that's perfectly fine. So you see the difference with open space. What this board has seen before with a lot of planned developments is a lot of green space running behind them to try to meet that. People can go out to their back. You see that in Sugar Mill, for example, although that's older, is you see the green space behind where people can use that. Or Terra Vista was mentioned. They have a lot more green space than was actually talked about, but they have a lot of trails and a lot of open areas where you can walk. The 20% is a hard and fast. There's not an ability with this board or the county commission to deviate from that. They're not at 20%. Now they have improved it. Their original submittal was 8%. They're now at 14%. So they've got a lot better on this. I think we can go to the entire thing. There are some more pocket parks. They're not shown on this because, again, that was a late submittal. But they do have some pocket parks here and there that are helping them to meet the open space. You heard a lot about it's 50 acres, it's 50 acres. The code doesn't talk about how many acres. It's based on a reflection of how big it is and then 20%. Now, can they get to 20%? Probably. They'll have to demonstrate that at platting, so staff's condition remains unchanged. We don't have the ability to say, on this one, you don't have to meet open space. They really don't have that ability to deviate from that. Otherwise, density-wise, it certainly is meeting it. Engineering has had almost all of their conditions met. They're having some minor discussions on a few things, but their concerns have been met as well. Utilities is well aware of this project and is working with the applicant on that. So staff has no other concerns, and we do have the conditions as proposed.
Thank you. Questions from the board?
I have a question.
Commissioner Worthington.
Joanna, when you say we have no ability to deviate, isn't the PUD process for us to allow minor deviations within the code and the comp plan to approve well-designed projects?
The PUD process is for the land development code to approve it, yes, for the land development code. This is an item in the comprehensive plan. If it was just in the land development code, I'd be right with you. But this is a comprehensive plan which does not allow deviations. They're different.
I'd like to weigh in if I could on something here.
Michael?
So I want to do a little history here. So right now, Chapter 163 is called the Community Planning Act. Back in 1985, when the legislature adopted it, was the Local Government Comprehensive Planning and Land Development Regulation Act. So what that tells me is both the comp plan and the land development regulations have to operate in conjunction, consistent with each other. And Chapter 163, 3194, 1A establishes the legal foundation of the comp plan. And what that says is after a comprehensive plan or element or portion thereof has been adopted in conformity with this section, all development undertaken by and all actions taken in regard to development orders by local government agents, by governmental agencies in regard to land covered by such plan or element shall be consistent with such plan or element. So basically what that tells us is once you adopt a comprehensive plan, all development has to be consistent with that comprehensive plan. And as Ms. Coutu said, there's no variances from a comprehensive plan. There's no deviations to a comprehensive plan. If you want to change a policy or a goal or an objective, that's called a comprehensive plan amendment. And there's a comprehensive plan amendment in conjunction with this one here. Our comprehensive plan right now says, inside the PSA, the LDC shall be amended to require open space of not less than 20% for all new residential subdivisions located within the PSA. This property is within the PSA. There will be a platting of this property, so it will be a subdivision. And the 20% has to be followed in subdivisions. If you follow the line of thinking that we didn't adopt this 20% in the land development code, then I would say then there are no open space requirements. We know that's incorrect. 14% is 50 acres, and that's a lot of land. 20% is about 70 acres, and that's a better acreage for open space, and that is what's consistent with the comprehensive plan, not 50 acres. So the 3 C's, consistency, compatibility, and concurrency, maybe 2 of them have been met, but this one policy, if you don't follow it, you're not consistent with the comprehensive plan. And all development, all actions by our local government's got to be consistent with that comprehensive plan. So I respectfully disagree with Ms. Craig and the attorney, Mr. Stillwell. 14% does not cut it. 20% is consistency with the comprehensive plan.
Thank you, Michael. That's pretty clear, and you seem pretty confident. So, questions from the board? Other questions from the board?
I just want to know how like a subdivision like Terra Vista gets away with less than 20% then, if that's a truth. And I'm not here to say it is or isn't.
I can't tell you how it got there, but I can tell you.
So it's
that
not a
this
hard and fast. Then.
It is a hard and fast.
Then, but somebody else didn't.
I can tell you that.
So
Not sure that they didn't.
what do you mean?
I don't know that figure's correct.
Oh,
They have a lot
okay,
of
so
golf
we're not
course
taking that
areas
as
and
truth.
stuff.
That's just
I'm not
Understood.
verifying that at all, and their development of regional impact, which is a whole nother animal. But,
But that development also falls within this comprehensive plan amendment, the 20% open space.
right, and for example, one you heard a month or so ago up by Citrus Springs did have to meet it, and they did.
Correct.
Yeah, we're very consistent about that.
Right. So then my question is if it's hard and fast, and even if we change it and say we want to make condition number 5 14 or 15%, it doesn't really matter because it's a hard and fast rule. It stays 20%.
Until you amend the comprehensive plan.
Right. So we can't change it with a condition on this application.
Correct.
That's correct.
Unless there's a complete amendment to the comprehensive plan.
That's what we're saying, yes.
Correct.
That's
Okay.
right.
Yep. Mr. Stillwell?
Michael, I appreciate your comments on the Comprehensive Planning Act. Now, the policy we're talking about, 17.1511, do you have it in front of you?
I have part of it in front of me.
Which part
It
is
says
that?
inside the PSA, the LDC shall be amended to require open space of not less than 20% for all new residential subdivisions located.
Okay, thanks, that's great. Do you find any ambiguity in that sentence? Is it clear?
It's clear to me that 20% will be set aside for all subdivisions that are platted.
And to your knowledge, according with the policy, has the LDC been amended to incorporate these policies? Yes or no?
In this instance, it has not been amended to include the 20%. However, I don't believe that takes the 20% requirement because the plan and the code work in conjunction with each other.
I agree. Mr. Chairman, in 1990, when we did this policy, these policies were sent off to the State of Florida Department of Community Affairs for review. At the same time, we adopted the Land Development Code, Ordinance 9014, and that was sent to the Department of Community Affairs for review. The law requires that within 1 year from the date of adoption in 90, the county was to implement the code, the plan, by approving land development code regulations. Citrus County got ahead of itself, or beat the 1 year deadline, because they filed with the state simultaneously. I would say to you, and it's a known fact, that the LDC 9014 was not challenged by DCA for failure to comply with 171511, amending the LDC to incorporate open space standards. Any citizen had up to 1 year to challenge that and mandate that, and that never occurred. The county, to the extent that they believed that they were going to adopt land development regulations which were inconsistent with the comp plan, could identify a timetable under 163 and implement that timetable. That was allowed. In 2012, when the new text was adopted, the new LDC was adopted, again, all of that applied again. 2012, we had 1 year to challenge for inconsistencies. So what we're saying to you here today is, if you have to read the whole thing in paramateria, read it together. You look at policy 1714, it talks about community character and open space, protecting trees, protecting canopy roads. There are no canopy roads here. Protecting wetlands. There's a wetland fringe around the lake, but it's designated in open space. And protecting environmental sensitive areas. So policy 1714, out of the 5 things that open space is intended to protect, this project lacks 3 of them on the face of it. And the basic fact here is the term is unambiguous, okay? Statutory construction applies comprehensive land use planning. And if you don't believe that, you can read Catherine's Bay versus Citrus County, where the first DCA rejected the county's interpretation of their own comp plan and said the clear wording complies, and that's the intent. And so our position is 1511 is inspirational, if you will, like a goal, until such time as the Land Development Code is amended to comply. And it provides to you guidelines. And I go back, we think the quality is more important than the quantity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anything from staff?
Yeah, I don't want to get into a legal argument, nor am I going to. The Land Development Code does have a provision that says land area included within a PUD development shall be of such proportions as to properly accommodate all proposed uses in keeping with the general requirements of the county and the established objectives and policies of the adopted comprehensive plan. That's an overreaching, everything in the comprehensive plan has to be met, and that is what we have. I got nothing else unless you have any other questions.
Other questions for staff? Thank you. At this time, I will open the hearing to the public for public input. This time, I will invite anyone who is in favor of this application to please come forward. Anyone in favor? Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Larry Hensley. I live at 5578 West Dayflower Path, which is right off Crystal Oaks Drive. Excuse me. Got a question about, that's going to be a lot of homes put in right behind us here. Number one, what that impact's going to be on Crystal Oaks Drive itself. With the new highway coming in right there, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people living south of us coming up to get away from all the traffic and everything there. And so it's going to put a lot of traffic on that road now. And is there any plan or anybody thought anything about widening that road at any point? And also where the road comes in that goes through the center of the project, have you thought about, is there going to be a traffic light there? I mean, I know sometimes coming out of Dayflower Path when I'm trying to get out on Crystal Oaks Drive because of the way the highway from the west comes up, some people speed around through there. And when I'm coming out, sometimes somebody's coming around that corner pretty quick, and you got to get out there fast. I'm just a little concerned about all the traffic that's going to be on that highway. That's one thing. And another thing I was thinking about, and it illustrates you got that big recreational area down there, which, and I was wondering, is that going to be available to anyone in our existing subdivision, or is that a totally different HOA that we would have to join in order to be able to use anything there? Is there any benefits to the existing homeowners, or is this all totally separate from us? That and right behind my house is the big power lines that come across there. And now when I go out my back door, I look out, of course, look past the power lines, all trees. So now I'm going to be looking at rooftops out there. How close is that going to come up to that power line? Is there any kind of buffer space there at all? Or is it going to be like my house, my backyard, the power line's right there? Is it going to be the same way and we'll have somebody within throwing distance of my house now?
The board is not here to answer the questions. I will allow the applicant an opportunity to answer those questions after the public portion of the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this application? Anyone in favor? Now I'll invite anyone who is opposed to this application to please come forward.
My name's David Murphy. I live at 5567 West Chive Loop, which is in Cinnamon Ridge. Where you're planning to build, are you planning to do anything about the wildlife which has been pushed into our communities from the highway? Or do you plan to do what you did over by the mall, where you just took everything? Basically raped the land, the animals, and the wildlife. As far as that, you also have a stake for your property. We all meet. Me, the Gulf to Lake Highway Corp., which I'm their representative, and we all meet, and you're bringing people, trucks, and things onto our property where it's posted no trespassing. But we don't go for that very much, and appreciate if you didn't do it. The other is, how big of a buffer are you going to be? You're stating that it's going to come off of Cinnamon Ridge Drive, that you're going to connect to it. That property belongs to the Gulf to Lake Highway Corp. And the preserve, which is part of Cinnamon Ridge, and it's not for sale, nor will it be. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else would like to speak that is against this application? Anyone else who would like to address the board on this application? Now's the time to come forward. Seeing no one, I will declare the public portion of this hearing closed. I'll return the hearing back to the board for discussion and possible action.
Let the applicant respond.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. I will offer the applicant the opportunity to respond.
Thank you. Once again, Chuck Pigeon. Let me try to decipher my notes that I took here. Hopefully I got the questions understood. First of all, it's the question about traffic light. Traffic study was done, intersection existing conditions were calculated and measured. None of the intersections meet the warrants of a traffic signal under the state guidelines. That'll be monitored over time. Each development section that gets platted, the same question will come up. Does this development trigger any change in the intersections. So unfortunately, if we wanted a traffic signal, we couldn't have one that doesn't meet the warrant standards. The question about the community center, I don't know at this point standing here whether the community center will be open to the outside public or not. That's going to have to be determined by the community association, whether they would allow other folks to come in or visitors, or how that might work. I don't know. Typically, the HOA is going to make that decision. It hasn't been talked about, and I don't know an answer to that, unfortunately. There's a question about the power lines. There is a Withlacoochee electric power line that runs parallel to Crystal Oaks Drive. That will remain. That's an above-ground power system. We've talked to Withlacoochee. That'll stay. It uses a portion of this property. It's a 70-foot wide corridor. 35 feet of it is within Crystal Oaks Drive. 35 feet of it is on the property. That will remain undeveloped as a power line transmission corridor. We will be requesting if we can put some landscaping, under low-level landscaping under that power line to buffer it out. So that's what we get to work with. We have to go with what Withlacoochee allows in that area. We are trying to push lots further back beyond that 35 feet to create our own screening, if you want to call it. We don't want to look at the power lines, and we don't actually want to look at Crystal Oaks Drive. We want to keep a consistency in that area. So hopefully Withlacoochee will all work together, and we'll get some screening in there. Question for Mr. Murphy. He had a question about trucks on the property. I'm not exactly sure what he was talking about. The only trucks I'm aware of is the survey vehicles that have been surveying the property, which under Florida state law allows surveyors to go on private property and survey as they need to. Other than that, I'm not aware of any trucks driving on property, and I'm not quite sure of the Gulf to Lakes Highway Corp ownership. We did, by good design standards and by code, provide for emergency access locations, both for this project as well as the adjacent property. Should the road never go through Cinnamon Ridge, we don't have a say-so about that. That's up to Cinnamon Ridge and the property owner there, whether they feel they need emergency access. I can tell you, if there is a fire, they will be glad the road's there to get the emergency vehicles there to put out a brush fire or something like that. I think that answers the question. There was a question about wildlife and pushing wildlife someplace. There's been intensive environmental studies. The only recognized environmental animal on the property that we will work with and properly relocate is the gopher turtle. That's pretty common in Citrus County in the Sandhills, and those will have to be relocated in the areas that are impacted. Other than that, there'll be a minimum 25-foot buffer from any gopher turtle hole, and there's a lot of areas of green space that they'll be left unhindered. I tell you, when we dig drainage retention areas, and we've done them in Black Diamond, Meadowcrest, all over the place. Once the retention ponds are dug and the actual grass turf is there that the tortoises like, they will come and they will create a condominium out of the retention pond. We've seen it all over. So temporarily they'll be relocated, but they will come back pretty healthy. Other wildlife, unfortunately, we're trying to leave substantial buffer where there's good vegetation. Said most of the sandhills are pines, scrub oaks, and some open space. So we're cognizant of the wildlife. Hopefully that answers the question. Be glad to answer any more.
Any other questions from the board? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll bring it back to the board.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Worthington.
I think this is a well-designed project, and it's compatible and consistent with the surrounding area. I'm in favor of recommending it for approval. I have a legal question outstanding regarding condition number 5. I've heard from both parties, but the person I'd like to get an interpretation from is our counsel, who unfortunately is not here. 14% seems reasonable, but it cannot deviate. But then Mr. Stillwell makes an argument that the language is confusing, but we don't have the interpretation from our legal counsel. So I'm in favor of the project, but I have a question about number 5.
I share your feelings exactly. I think it's a great project. I would vote in favor of it right now if it were not for that condition number 5 that we're just unsure of as board members. However, staff, both members from staff that we heard from are very confident that the 20% is hard and fast. And, you know, none of us are attorneys. So until we get that interpretation, you know, we're kind of at a loss. But I'd like to hear from other board members.
Yeah, so I agree with everything you guys said, and as far as number 5, I think that we leave it as it is and we let the people that get paid money to make those decisions see if they want to change it, which is the BOCC. We're just recommending an approval. Obviously, they're going to hear and see that we've discussed number 5. I'm sure it's going to come up at the meeting. Like I said, they're the ones that get paid the big bucks, so let them make that decision. If it's hard and fast at 20, then I'm not in favor of trying to change something here that we can't change. If it is what it is, then unfortunately that's what it is. I think that 14% on this project is enough, personally, just like you, Ms. Worthington. I think it's a well-designed project. It's in a perfect location for this type of development, planned service area, underground utilities. As a lifelong resident of Citrus County, you don't want to see, you know, the nature get taken out of the nature coast. Over 50% of the county still is a forest or a wetland or aquatic preserve. So, you know, there's always going to be the nature. And then as a resident of Crystal Oaks, I know that road definitely gets a lot of traffic. But I'm here to tell you guys, Citrus County is growing. I've been at 3 different meetings in the last 3 months, and there's about 2,000 something homes on the projects for Citrus County right now between this project and 2 others that I know of. So if you don't like traffic, you might want to start. It's a great time to sell your house in Levy County, Chiefland, areas like that. But Citrus County, the secret's out.
Thank you, Commissioner Bramlett. Other comments? Commissioner Bass, you look like you're ready to comment.
The applicant made reference to the existing natural buffers, the existing 50-foot RV park buffer. Can we add that as a condition just to make sure that we don't lose that it actually becomes a condition that?
They're referencing an off-site buffer that's on the RV park itself, so we cannot do that.
Okay.
It's not on this property.
Okay, and also underneath their supplemental information, they said that there's, in order to protect these wetlands, a 15-foot buffer will be maintained around the wetlands and pre-treatment drainage areas will be created around the pond to collect stormwater before discharge. Can we indicate that buffer will be maintained?
Absolutely. We can add that to condition number 6, which addresses buffers and refer to the wetland setback that they've mentioned.
Thank you. And this is a question for staff. On page 4 of your report, you talk about impacts on affordable housing. The residential units proposed are not expected to meet minimum affordable housing criteria. Is that going to create a problem for the county as a whole, that we're not meeting any affordable standards?
The county does not have minimum percentages for affordable housing, so we do have to address it. They're not, to our knowledge, this is not an affordable housing project.
Okay. Just trying to keep us from getting
I appreciate
a lawsuit coming at us down the road.
Feel free. Thank you.
And I think that's all that I was concerned with. Thank you.
Commissioner Stone.
Mr. Facemeyer, I have a question for the staff on condition number 12, the phasing of the project. Is there anything that would prohibit those phases from running concurrently, or are they successive?
Yeah, it actually continues on the next page, talking about they can be individually modified as needed for as long as they meet infrastructure. So yes, they can. I talked about they can have phase 3A and 3B and 3C if they want to. There's a lot of flexibility as long as they meet those overall numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from the board?
Should we offer the applicant, we've added a condition to just, can they respond to say that if they're good or not good with that condition?
For the wetland buffer that's on their application?
Yeah.
Yes, we're okay with the 15-foot buffer. Just keep in mind, we do have to have access to get to and from the water, so there's going to be some gaps and things that currently exist. So it's a matter of how staff interprets, the buffer. We're interpreting the buffer as if it's a water management district type buffer, and they understand you've got to get to and from the water. And maybe it's a trail, or maybe it's a walking path, or a boat launch area. But other than that, yes, 15-foot buffer is what's intended.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I do have a question that I wish Mr. Dixon was here for, and then it's just kind of inquisitive more than anything. Like, an impact or a development of this size is obviously going to have impact on schools and stuff like that in the area. Do we have sufficient capacity? I never hear about things like that being talked about. We talk about the landfill, the sewer capacity. It's just a question.
Citrus County has removed school concurrency, so it's no longer an item that they have to present. They did, however, I think, contact the schools anyway on this project, but the school board is well aware of this. Mr. Dixon is aware of it, and they'll have to deal with it.
I assume the school board would have been noticed like any other adjacent property owners.
Yes, and also we let them know right away. This is near Rock Crusher. As soon as this came in, we were in full discussions with them, but we do not have school concurrency on our books, so we don't have anything from him in writing that says there's capacity, there's not capacity. The school board is well aware of this project.
This is just a question, a general question. If this project were somewhere else, not adjacent to Rock Crusher School, would the county be aware, or would the county school system be aware of?
Actually, yes, we have an intergovernmental agreement with them that we do talk about any new developments that are coming in, including smaller plats. So now 2 and 3 lots we don't usually talk about with them, but all of our new projects we do let them know right away. We do a lot of give and take.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Yes. Can we clarify the conditions?
Yeah, I think we should.
So we can get the motions put together, please.
All right.
We deleted.
Deleted condition number 10.
10.
Condition number 1 talks about October 25th, 2021. That date has changed to the December 29th, 2021. Condition number 2 has not changed. We talked about the lot width, lot area, and lot coverage that is remaining as proposed. 3 and 4 are the same. Condition number 5 is understood that the planning board has some concerns about that. We will make sure that's reflected to the county commission. Condition number 6 added the wetland setback buffer that is in their application, understanding they need to access that. I'll come up with some kind of wording for that. Conditions 7, 8, and 9 are the same: landscaping, central water and sewer, and trip generation rates that have to be met at the time of platting. Condition number 10 was removed for sidewalks. They're demonstrating that. Condition number 11, instead of the long laundry list from the engineers, is that they must meet access management standards per the Land Development Code and Comprehensive Plan unless otherwise authorized by the county engineer. Specifically, there are 2 items that are still in discussion: the intersection 2 and 3 on Rock Crusher Road and the alternative designs for cul-de-sacs. Condition number 12 with the phasing development has stayed as proposed. And condition 13 defaults to county standards if they're not mentioned. Condition number 14 allows minor modifications as per the Land Development Code.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, for the purpose of a motion,
Mr. Bramlett.
the Planning and Development Commission finds application number CPA-AA-PUD-22-01 consistent with the Citrus County Comprehensive Plan and the Citrus County Land Development Code, and that this board recommends approval with the amended conditions as discussed of the application to the Board of County Commissioners based upon the evidence and testimony presented and the staff report and conclusions regarding this petition.
I have a motion by Commissioner Bramlett. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Had a couple seconds. Commissioner Scragg. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
And Mr. Chair, I would say that this application has been set for the first hearing with the County Commission on March 8th. Thank you.
I'm going to declare a 10-minute break, and we'll reconvene at 10:45. I'd like to reconvene this meeting. Time has arrived for hearing on V 22-02.
Yes, this application is requesting a single-family dwelling, have an 18-foot setback from property line. This is an aerial view of the property. This view is of the subject property from North Burrows Path. This is looking north on North Burrows Path. This is looking south on North Burrows Path. This is looking north on North Jakes Way. Looking south on North Jakes Way. And this is the site plan as submitted by the applicant.
Thank you. I see the applicant has come to the podium, so the floor is yours.
Yes, sir. I'm Jonathan McKinney. I'm the production manager for Adams Homes. Basically, we think that the house was either pinned or placed in the wrong spot, more forward to the road by our concrete guy. With it being a corner lot, we feel like it's not, impeding and the view or anything as you come around the corner. And also, we still have a 20-foot driveway, so we don't feel like that, vehicles would be in the street or anything to that nature. Basically, we would just be asking for a variance to move forward with it as is if possible.
Thank you. Is your position that the concrete guy put it in the wrong spot?
I believe so, or either it was pinned a little bit, too far forward. Basically, it's 20.9, so it's, 4 feet too far.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from the board? Thank you. Oh, staff? Staff have questions?
I don't know if there's an HOA out here, or is there one that you had to go to this, or not really?
I'm unaware. I think there is, and I think that they filed with them, and they told us we had to come and
Okay, no
get
problem.
with
I just
you
want to see if
guys
you had any
on it.
comments from them or anything on
Sure.
this, because I think there is, but I'm not sure. Okay, I apologize. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anything else?
Not right now, just hold on.
Okay.
We're going to hear
I
from
have a
staff.
question.
Oh, we do have a question, Commissioner
Yeah.
Scragg.
Is the house or the pad the same distance as the next door? Because visually,
It's not.
okay, because visually it looked like it was just about the same.
It's close. You have to really get up beside it and look down them like this, and you can see it's just a hair forward.
And how about the back? Because
The
again,
back-
visually it looked like it was in line with all the other.
Yeah.
Just from a visual,
Yes,
it
ma'am.
looked like it was in line, front and back, with the other houses on the street.
Yeah, we have some of the houses in there, they have a lanai, and some of them have an inset lanai, so it kind of varies on the back side, but the front side, it's really, you really have to look at it to see it. You have to get in line and look down through there, and it's in a curve, so it's kind of, it doesn't really look out of line very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we hear from staff.
I'm going to go ahead and introduce Amber Split. She is one of our new planners, and we're happy to have her here.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're looking at variance 2202 for Adams Homes, Northwest Florida.
You've got the control up there with the gold. There you go. And it's this one.
Okay, so we have the aerial view of the property. It looks vacant, but there's a concrete slab on it. They're proposing an 18-foot right-of-way setback to Burrows Path. The lot is approximately 10,796 square feet or 0.25 acres. And currently the cement slab is poured at 18.9 feet from the property line. These photos are from the side view, so you can see that it's poured closer to the right-of-way than the adjacent property. And the second photo is of the back rear portion of the cement slab, and you can see that that's also forward. They're proposing a 2,026 square foot single-family dwelling. That would include the AC pad. They have poured 2,017 square feet of the cement slab, and that does not include the AC pad. Staff found no variances or deviations from the master plan. The current setback from Burroughs Path is 50 feet from the center line, or 25 feet from the property line. This is their building envelope. They have approximately 4,672 square feet to build within. As submitted, they gave us the approved site plan, which shows that they would do the setback at 25 feet from Burroughs Path. And then they submitted the current, which is where they had poured the cement slab at the 18.9 feet from Burroughs Path. That's the end of that. We don't see this as a minimum request. The applicant can relocate the cement slab, and not all findings of fact have been found positive findings.
Do you believe that the applicant has met all conditions except for the setbacks? In other words, the pad that was poured, is that consistent with the permitting and other requirements that builders would typically need to meet?
Are you asking if they have any other variance?
No. I mean, aside from the setback issue, which is obvious, and are there any other deficiencies in this construction?
Right, the site plan was approved, and they just put it in the wrong place.
Okay,
Other than
yeah,
that.
I mean, I just
Right.
want to make sure I wasn't
Yeah.
missing something
No,
else.
short and sweet, you got it.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from the board? Thank you. Thank you. Good job, Amber, first job.
It's not done yet.
At this time, I will open this hearing to the public for public comments. If there's anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this application, now's the time to come forward. Anyone in favor? Is there anyone opposed to this application? Now's the time to come forward. Anyone opposed? Seeing no one, I will close the public portion of the hearing and return this back to the board. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Stone?
I have a question for the staff. If traffic coming on North Jake's Way toward North Burroughs comes to there, with this building going to be farther forward, is there a visual problem of traffic turning left from North Jake's Way onto North Hillsborough Road? Can they see traffic coming?
Right, then the new location is not in the visibility triangle that's outlined in the land development code.
Okay, so that's clear. All right, I have no other questions.
Other questions or comments from the board? Commissioner Scragg?
The back of the property has a really sharp slope going up. And so if they push the pad back the 4 feet, they'd miss almost the whole backyard because it has such a huge slope. So visually, it looks fine where it is, and visually, from the front, it almost looks like it's the same as the other homes on the street.
There's a picture.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, so the question is do we want to allow a variance for a mistake? It's pretty
Pretty clear.
cut and dried here. All of the findings of fact are negative and it doesn't comply with the comprehensive plan or the land development code. So that's the long and short of it. Do we allow variances because of mistakes? Mistakes are made. Listen, 100%. I understand. We've had mistakes made in the construction that I'm involved in. It happens. I don't know. I would like to see what you guys think. I mean, I've been pretty much, I treat it like any other variance. If it's a variance for a wetland setback or a variance for whatever kind of variance that somebody comes in here for, we typically have a test. And if Miss Lynn was here, she would tell us exactly what that test is. And I know that you don't need to hear it from her because you know. But in an instance like this, I don't know. You know, do you make, because the only other option is you know what the option is. They're tearing the slab up. So I want to hear what you guys have to say.
I'm with you. I'm torn. I understand that mistakes are made, but I also understand that, you know, the rules are the rules. So
I used to be on a HOA, and as such, we had a house that was built in Oak Village years ago, and it was built in the wrong place, and the family was trying to sell it. The people were deceased, and they had trouble selling it because no one could get a mortgage on a house that was in the wrong place. And I don't know what the outcome was. I know it was going to the courts, but this only opens up a bag of worms for people down the road.
of course, our action would allow it to be in the wrong place if we were to approve this application. So it would negate a situation like that. It would, if we were to approve this.
I have to agree with my colleagues that mistakes are made. We've all made them through our life, but I think that this is so blatant. It's so far out forward, and I think you can visually see that there's an issue with this. I cannot support giving a variance. I'm totally against giving them a variance.
And this is not the first time that this company has done this. We had another instance where they built a house in the wrong place. They didn't build it. They had the rough plumbers in there and the forms, and it was noticed by the neighbors that it looked too close to the roadway, and we had to move it. And it was an expense, but at least they hadn't poured the slab yet, and that was the same company.
Do we know, I guess this is a question for staff, do we know how this issue came to light?
First of all, Gal, can talk into your microphones
Oh.
for poor Ms. Burton here later. Was this a code complaint, or they just came forward?
Was it a complaint?
It was not that we're aware of, no.
So code compliance or somebody?
This appears to have been voluntarily submitted to our knowledge.
Okay.
Right, which is what you would do as a builder. I don't think it really matters who
Right.
submitted
No,
it.
I was just curious.
Right? Like, I mean, if you find and you go, oh, we made a mistake, we better fix it. You can't just keep going and then sell the house, and then it's going to create a huge title issue and everything like
Right.
Mr. Royce is talking about.
Yep.
I mean, I guess I'm just going to have to lean and rely on the fact that I try and be very consistent in my voting, and a variance that has all the findings of fact to be found negative, I would not support the application.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm just gonna-
many times when we consider variances, particularly with respect to wetlands and surface water, we do so on the basis that not only does it not meet the code, but there are consequences of the structure being too close to the water. You know, one would assume that runoff from the building would in some form or manner pollute the surface waters of the wetlands. Others could be visual or the like. I'm not sure that there's any adverse consequences as a result of this structure being 7 feet closer to the roadway. I don't know. Does anybody else
I agree.
see any adverse consequences to this? Which is why I asked about the site distance, if there was anything as a consequence of this, whether complaints from the neighbors or site distance. I don't see any, and obviously my colleague, Ms. Worthington, does not either. So I still haven't made up my mind, but I throw that out for your consideration as well.
Yeah, I continue to be torn. We don't believe there's an issue with the sight lines. but we've denied applications for a lot less.
If we do it here, we're going to be doing it elsewhere. I mean, all the other homes on the street were able to be met according to what staff has indicated to us.
Should we never,
There-
should we never grant any variances then?
I think if there's a hardship, we should look at it. This is not a hardship. So they made a mistake. They have to pay the price for making a mistake. I'm sure that, you know, you've made a mistake somewhere in your business and you're not paying for that mistake somewhere along the line. I know when I was in private practice, you know, my business made some mistakes and we had to pay the price of making the mistakes. And I think it's the same thing as here, is that when they had staked this out, I would think, particularly in this case, we're not talking inches. If we're talking inches, you wouldn't see it. But I mean, you can see, looking at this, that there is definitely, the house is much farther forward than the house past it. I think that this could have been spotted, should have been spotted. It came to light. I think we owe it to ourselves, the county, and that neighborhood to require him to take this foundation out and do it correctly. And I will vote not to allow this variance to go forward. I can't go into it.
Other comments?
A lot of good points have been made, and, you know, I understand all of your concerns. At the same time, I share Mr. Stone's opinion that, you know, I don't feel like it's unreasonable. I know you're saying if it's inches, to me, it's not that big of a mistake, you know, like it's a few feet, and it's on the corner, so the sight line isn't impacted, so I would be in favor of it.
If we may have our banter a little bit here.
Well, you're allowed to have a discussion, yeah, I mean, this is.
The
Would you
discussion
want
is
to live
good.
next to that? I guess that's the question now. Would you like to live next to that, knowing that it could have been corrected? You know, so you live in the next house, and now this house is now pushed out in front of you. Would you want to have that next to you, knowing that it could have been corrected? And that's what we're saying. This can be correctable. This is a correctable mistake.
At an extreme cost.
So what? That's a part of doing business.
So what?
It's the part of doing business.
Okay. I'm a business owner, so extreme cost makes a difference.
I ran $30 million worth of construction back in my hometown, and we made a few mistakes on those $30 million projects. And I, as a city, had to pay on the chin for a couple of mistakes that happened. It's part of doing business. And in this case, he made a mistake. He's got to pay for it. He's probably talking 10 yards of concrete.
Commissioner Scragg.
In this photo, the angle shows that you can see that it's forward. When you're standing out there, it looked like it was even to me. Front and back. I did not notice that it was pushed forward.
My concern is not, I understand the business losing money like that. It's an expense, I understand that. But this is a business that builds thousands of houses. And I'm concerned about the homeowner or someone who's trying to get insurance or trying to get a loan on a thing, and a working stiff that buys a house in a nice little community. I'm concerned about him. You know, if this guy poured it in the wrong place, why pass it on down to the guy that's working 2 jobs to buy it? No, I don't see that.
You're like you're biting into the bullet, Dave.
I'm not a
Well,
banker, but I mean, like, I can't imagine if a variance is granted and it's legally allowed that you wouldn't be able to get a mortgage on it. Mortgages are denied if you don't have air conditioning, electricity, plumbing, functioning plumbing. I've never heard, and maybe Dave knows, I mean, I've never heard of a bank denying a mortgage based on
Well, if
a
if
granted
if the variance
variance.
is approved, all that goes away. I mean,
Right.
if we approve this variance, all those issues go away. The more we discuss this, the more I feel that I'm not going to support this because we have, the board, I have consistently voted against waterfront setbacks, and we've been pretty rigid on those type of applications, so I think I will not be supporting this. Other comments?
All I can think of is our county council saying, there has to be a hardship for the variance to be approved. I don't
It's
think
gotta
there's a
be
hardship.
to the land and.
Right, and there's no hardship
And I don't
to,
see one. Having said that,
See
I'll
if I
entertain a
can find-
motion.
The Planning and Development Commission finds application number V2202 inconsistent with the Citrus County Land Development Code and is not in keeping with the intent of the policies of the Citrus County Comprehensive Plan, and the board denies the application based upon the evidence and testimony presented in the staff report and conclusions regarding this petition.
Have a motion by Commissioner Bass. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Royce. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
No.
We have a no by Commissioner Scragg and a no by Commissioner Worthington. Everyone else is in favor.
I voted in favor.
So the motion is denied.
Well, the motion.
Motion
passes
The
for
motion
denial.
passes, the application is not approved.
you're next. I didn't realize.
Time has arrived for hearing on application AA 22-01.
Yes, this request is to change the Sugar Mill Woods master plan designation from multifamily to single-family on the subject property. The aerial view of the subject property. This is a view of the property from Athenia Drive. This is looking north on Athenia Drive. This is looking south on Athenia Drive. This is the surrounding master plan designations.
Thank you. Would the applicant please come forward?
Hi, my name is John Kujan, Kujan. I reside at 3 Beverly Court, Homosassa, Florida. The property in question, it's just basically, it's multifamily. I'd just like to change it to a single family so that I can build a home. That's it, really. That's all it is.
Okay, this is your opportunity.
No, but I'm just saying, it's basically, you know, I don't all that fancy stuff, but this is it.
It's refreshing.
I just hope that you say yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
May we hear from staff?
Good morning.
Good morning.
This request is to change the subject property from a multifamily designation to a single-family designation. I do apologize, on the coordinator presentation, the surrounding master plan designations had not been updated at that point, but this one you'll see what the surrounding designations are currently. The property is one lot total. It's 1.45 acres in size. This is the actual designations around here. The subject property is actually located between two lots that were changed back in 2020 under application AA 2003. That previous one changed lot 1301 and 03. So this one's is sandwiched right between two that already got the single family designation, and I believe one of those lots actually has a home under construction or built now. So this is a trend that we see in Sugar Mill Woods. The proposed use is compatible with the surrounding area, and the findings of fact have all been found to be positive findings.
Thank you, Joe. Questions from staff, or questions for staff? Thank you, Joe. This time I'll open the hearing to the public for public comment. Anyone in favor of this application? Anyone in favor? Anyone opposed to this application, please come forward. Anyone opposed? Seeing no one, I will close the public portion of the hearing. Return it back to the board for discussion and possible action.
I think it's your turn to make a motion.
We've done this on several occasions in Sugar Woods. I think it's a fine idea, and
Yep.
I would support it.
Yeah, me too. I'll entertain a motion.
Planning and Development Commission finds application number AA22-01 consistent with the Citrus County Comprehensive Plan and Citrus County Land Development Code, and this board recommends approval of the application to the Board of County Commissioners based upon the evidence and testimony presented in the staff report and conclusions regarding this petition.
A motion by Commissioner Bass. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Worthington. Additional discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Chair, I'll say that this application has been placed on the February 22nd Board of County Commissioners agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. See, Mr. Stillwell is still with us. Time has arrived for
First and last.
CPA AAPUD 22-02.
Yes, this application, this Camp and Water RV Park lies on West Priest Lane in Homosassa and proposes to change the land use and zoning and adopt a master plan for an existing RV park. Camp and Water RV Park lies on West Priest Lane in Homosassa and has existed since at least 1972. The RV park has a PDR and CL designation on the Ldc Atlas, and this application will change the site to RVP to recognize the existing park. This is Camp and Water Drive, which leads from West Priest Lane to the RV park. The site contains 90 RV sites and 4 cabins. This is a view of one of the cabins on site. This is the existing boat marina. And this is the site plan submitted by the applicant.
Thank you.
Good morning again, Clark Still on behalf of Camp and Waters. The subject property is a cooperative. I know you're used to POAs or homeowners association, but this is one of those rare instances where you're dealing with a co-op. I just thought that of interest for you. This is a housekeeping process we're engaged in here. One of the residents in my client's park went to the county and tried to pull a permit to put a pad in. Okay, now there was already a pad for the RV on that particular site. They just wanted an additional concrete pad. And the person was advised that because this is a non-conforming use without an existing master site plan, that pad would result in an expansion and therefore was prohibited under the code. It's pretty black letter law. That resulted in my clients meeting with Ms. Coutu and Ms. Coutu telling them the pathway to the promised land of plan consistency.
Came through the PDC.
And then that pathway comes through my office. And so we're engaged in this housekeeping application. You have a G flume on a majority of the park that is correct, RVP. That is a result of action that was done in 2003 when mixed-use district was eliminated and they created the RVP district. And then they created the LDC and named it PDR based on the idea that you had an approved master plan. Well, there is no approved master plan to support that PDR designation, hence another problem. And then there's a small piece of this property, 1 acre, less than 1 acre, that used to be their package plant before the central water and sewer, and that's coastal and lakes. Right now it is a open storage area, so we're changing the 1 acre to RVP on the G flume, RVP on the Ldc Atlas, and then the total site, 7 some acres, is going to have an approved master plan, the PUD. Now I'm going to be and it does not meet current code, not as to density or intensity. all right? You're supposed to have 10 acres, we don't have 10 acres. The density exceeds the 7 units per acre under the plan in the LDC. I can't do anything about that. It's just what it is, and it's been that way for a long, long time, 70s. So let's run through my PowerPoint now. Be very quick with you. Now, we do ask for 2 specific expansions, if you will, and you'll see these in the application. Do you have a PowerPoint, Ms. Austin, over there? Okay, let's go to the next one. There's the aerial. Here you can see that small piece of CL in the, just going to change. This is the G flume. Next one, please. There's the area changing, highlighted. Next one, please. This is the Ldc Atlas Map, and you can see it's got a PDR. Normally when you have a PDR, you have a master plan. There is no master plan here. Now, one of the exhibits in our application, there's a staff memo about the history of this site and how it got here. It's pretty messy, and we're trying to correct that by this. Next one, please. This is the change for the PD. Next one, master plan. Next one, please. This is the approved State of Florida Department of Health site plan. Now, before we filed this, we had to go out and survey some of these lots and then submit it to the Department of Health for their review and approval. 94 lots, of which 4 cabins. That's their license. Next one, please. This is the area that is coastal and lakes, less than 1 acre. Is going to be changed. Next one, please. There's the total site. That's the abutter land use map. You can see a lot of vacant property, a lot of single-family residential. And again, it's been there prior to a lot of that single-family residential development. Next one, please. Here's your site plan. The 2 issues that are highlighted here. You can see the note for the boat trailer storage site. You can see the RV sites. You can see the recreational site. Within the recreational site, we asked for 2 limited expansions that are on the site plan. One is for a small basketball court. Otherwise, it would be an expansion of a non-conforming use. I believe that is 12 by 16, right next to the recreational building. And the other is the ability to put a roof and a screen around the fish cleaning station. Next one, please. This is the site plan for the storage. You can see we've added a buffer and some storage sites. Next one, please. This is a fish cleaning station, which the client asked to screen in and put a little roof over it, and that would represent an expansion of a non-conforming use. So they were told that that was not allowed, and we've put that in as a request within the PUD to allow to screen and roof this small fish cleaning station. And you ask why? All I can tell you is if you've ever been around no-see-ums when you're cleaning fish, it's not pleasant. And that's exactly what it's all about. Next one, please.
That's the last one.
That's it. So if you approve this, Joanna's life is going to get a lot easier because they won't have to deal with individual requests on each RV site. Within the master plan, we list what's allowed for each RV site. And that's pretty much what everyone's got right now, and therefore they won't be able to deviate from that. My client will know exactly what they got, and they won't have to run into this issue of, well, that's an expansion of a non-conforming use by screening in a small fish cleaning station. Again, it's a lot of house cleaning up of a situation that honestly could have been corrected back in the 80s, and for whatever reason, the client elected not to do that.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Questions from staff?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stillwell.
Thank you.
say Mr. Stillwell never tries to make my life easier, so that's, but we do work together and we'll continue to do so and try to get these applications before you as clean as possible. This is the Camp and Water RV Park, and it does consist of approximately 7.8 acres. I've been asked by a few people out there and in the area, is this an expansion application? It is not. You heard Mr. Stillwell use that word. However, there's not an expansion here, and I'll clear that up in just a moment. So we talked about the Land Development Code Atlas designation. When we created the RV park designation, it was a new designation on the master plans on the future land use map, and we went through and put that on the map for this site in 2006. However, in 2008, then we came along and we said, now we'll fix on the Land Development Code all these RV parks and mobile home parks and make them RVP. The representative for Camp and Water refused to do so. They went to the board and said, we don't want to be part of this. Tried to explain that made them non-conforming. PDR does not allow RV parks. It has to be something like RVP or REC. They did not want to be part of it. So unfortunately, that pushed them into non-conforming situation, and that's why we're here today. It's correct, things like slabs, basketball hoops, anything like that, not a hoop, a court, any kind of impervious would be an expansion because they're now non-conforming. If they had gone to RVP in the first place, they certainly could have those items. So this is a cleanup application. It's not an expansion. If you grant this and the board grants this to RVP, we're just recognizing the existing master plan with, yes, a basketball court. Some of the pavers may turn into slabs, things like that. Those were allowed in RV parks, and they would be allowed now if this gets approved. So this is an existing store that they have on site. Again, nothing has changed. The density's not changing, the intensity, excuse me, just like the health department. We did not have a master plan on this site. It's been around since the 70s. So we don't have anything to rely on other than environmental health. This is consistent with environmental health. We know about the 4 cottages. It does, if it came along today, sure, it's well exceeding, but this has been in existence since the 70s. They are permitted for the uses. They're permitted for 90 RVs and 4 cabins, and staff is not questioning that in any way. Just this is the property. Yes, it does not meet current standards. Again, it predates everything. There's one of the cabins on the left. You don't see sidewalks. These driveways are awfully narrow. I can't tell you where one site goes and one site doesn't. It's kind of a merged together, but it all is recognized from the 70s, and we're not proposing to have any questions on that. These are some of pavers that some creative people have put up. If this application is approved, they could turn that into a slab, for example, instead of pavers. And this is the master plan. You know I like colors, so this is my best attempt at colors. Couldn't do a lot of perfect colors there, but you see the cabins are in the 4 blue, the 4 brown. The RV boat storage site is already in place. It's not something new, so it is there, but it's now reflected on this master plan that's being proposed for adoption. You can see a lot of their community center type things are there on the left side. They have a nice little dog park there. They have, I think, a bocce area, quite a bit of recreation. None of that is changing, although they would be adding a basketball court and the fish cleaning station as he's suggested. So staff is recommending approval of this application. This will actually recognize an existing RV park that frankly should have been done back in 2006. It's not, so here we are to fix that.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Any questions? Thank you, Joanna. At this time, I'll open the hearing to the public for any input. I'll invite anyone who's in favor of this application to please come forward.
Mr. Stillwell, did you have any questions?
No,
okay.
fine, thank you.
Anyone in favor of this application? Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed to this application?
Good morning. My name is Jody Hamilton, and I live at 5685 South Sea Otter Path, and I am right across the street from where they store the boats. We moved there in 2014, and when we had moved there, they had added 6 additional sites where the boats used to be parked at. So now they've moved all that parking, the boat parking and trailer parking, right in front of our home. There's just a few problems with that. Number one, the campground, as you noted, has their own driveway, but a lot of times their guests are not using that driveway to pull in either their trailers or their boats. They're using a residential road, which is Sea Otter Path, and that encroaches a lot of times on our private property because they're using either our land or they're using our driveways to pull in and then back up their trailers. It's become a huge issue. We have complained to the county many times about that, but they won't come out and force it because it typically happens on the weekends when they're most busiest. Another thing is, a lot of times, like in the busy season, the guests are coming in after the office has closed and they have no idea where to park their boats, and there is no other place to park their boats, and so they are parking their boats on the right-of-way and halfway in the road itself. So it's become a real nuisance for the neighbors in this area. Let's see, what else? I think that's about it. Honestly, we would, I think all of us agree, we would love for them to build a wall to contain their property and their guests inside their unit to where they can no longer use our property to keep backing up their trailers. They should be going in their main road, coming in through there and backing up their boats on their own property. And that's what we would like to see happen. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Anyone else opposed to this application?
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Joseph Prescott. I live at 5703 South Sea Otter Path in Homosassa, right across the street. If you could leave that map up, please.
Yes.
I've been there since 2011. I agree that initially when I moved in, Camp and Water had campsites along South Sea Otter Path where the roadway was that there was parking area that they removed, and they put campsites in. So as time went on, they moved more and more trailers down to where I live, and I live right where the development area is proposed, where the trailer parking area is proposed. My understanding is where they're going to increase the size of that parking area, because now it's so congested, is actually going to be moved into the marsh. When we bought our house, our window overlooked a marsh, and I was told by Cindy Lewis, the person who was selling the property, that nobody's ever going to be able to build here. So our front door, we have a nice marsh, we have beautiful sunsets and all that. But as time has gone on, we have more and more of these trailers that are moved down and have completely congested that area. You have a very nice picture of a very serene place with that roadway going into Camp and Water, which is a nice picture. But it doesn't really reflect what that road turns into, or South Sea Otter turns into, when the season really kicks in. That road is pretty narrow. I've even had to have the county come in and try to trim the trees back, because where my septic mound is, come to the road, people actually drive off the road onto my property and have a constant rut. And as you are aware, we're pretty much at grade there with the water as the marsh is across the way. And if you drive off into that rut, now I've got water coming up and percolating into the road all the time, and we have a constant moat during wet season anyway in front of our house, which the county came in and tried to put some pavement in, so I don't have to walk or ride my motorcycle or bicycle through water every single time I come into the house, and that goes on for about 6 to 7 months a year, all the time. So not only that, but when it's busy, they have occupied that entire stretch of road from the marsh all the way to their driveway. So they have 3 access roads that go into Camp and Water. And I don't know exactly how busy the others are. If you ever driven down Silk Oak, that entire site has a nice 8-foot fence all the way along. Yes, you can see the tops of the campers behind there, but it separates them from the residential area. On our side, we're looking at trailers, and cars backing up, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, people backing up, leaving their vehicles running, hooking up their campers, lights shining through our windows. So we have that happening pretty much on a regular basis, and it gets worse as the season goes on. Not only that, when you look at the nice picture of the campsite, it looks like there's lots of space. Well, if you actually even go there today, which is not their busy time, you find that it's extremely congested. Many of those campsites have more than one vehicle. They have more than one trailer. Not only do they bring in a boat and a trailer, but they also bring in a trailer with an RV, with multiple, it's very distracting. I'm sorry I went over.
No, please, your time has expired. Can you conclude your remarks?
I think there's a lot more than meets the eye. There's infringement on the wetlands. I think that we have issues with increasing traffic on the road. We have all kinds of off-road vehicles, razors and side-by-sides, and go-karts with children driving around on the road, which, of course, nobody really mentions, but when the season picks up, that becomes a real issue on the road. You're going around the corner, you've got a kid on a go-kart coming at you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition to this application?
Hi, I'm Robert Frank. I live at 5695 South Sea Otter Path, directly across the street from the boat parking area. We object to the land use plan change from low density residential. Basically, I don't believe that land use plan would allow what amounts to a commercial parking lot on that 1 acre site in the southeast corner. As everybody has explained, there's a lot of traffic on from South Sea Otter Path, which is a narrow residential side street into and out of the boat trailer parking area, especially during scallop season. It gets very congested, and there's no control. There's parking out into the right-of-way and sometimes into the roadway, and the people moving in and out of the parking lot tend to pull over onto our property or use our driveways for maneuvering area, etc. So it's really not in, that part of the RV park is not in keeping with the single-family residential nature of the rest of the area. And the parking on the 1 acre site in the southeast corner has really been allowed for about 4 years. So that area hasn't been used for large-scale boat parking or boat trailer parking going back into the 70s. It's fairly recent. Bear with me 1 second. However, if they are going to approve a change and use that property, continue to use it for what amounts to a commercial parking lot, we would request, or I would request, that they surround the parking area with a wall or a fence to keep people from going back and forth from South Sea Otter Path all along the entire property line. I'd ask that you establish access only through the main RV park entrance, not off of our residential side street. And we'd also ask that they prohibit 24-hour access to and from that parking area. My day starts at like 7 a.m., but some of the people that use that parking lot to go fishing or whatever, their day starts at 5 a.m. So they back up, hook up their trailer or boat or whatever to their truck, load things back and forth, and so by virtue of that, our day starts at 5 a.m. when it otherwise would have started later. And during scallop season, there are people come in from midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. They show up and want to know where they're going to park their trailer, where they're going to park their boat, and there is no place to park it. Nobody's there to, there's no signage, nobody's there to guide them, and it turns into a free-for-all. And so, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Anyone else who would like to speak in opposition to this application, please come forward.
Hi, my name is Rodney Beebe, B-E-E-B-E. I own the lot across the street from where this proposed is begun. We're looking to break ground and put our own home on. But we have stayed over there through the days, fish and whatnot. And not to sound redundant as my neighbors here, or future neighbors, this is a
a major problem with this parking of the trailers. Now, obviously, they've added these 6 or 7 lots down at one end, which used to be storage. Now what they've done is put a fence up in this storage for these vehicles that come off of Sea Otter Lane. With this being said, as the other constituents spoke, it's a never-ending vehicle thing. At 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning with diesel trucks, people sitting there, nobody knows where to go. If this is the proposals to pass, we're all asking that there's a barrier, a buffer, a dike, a fence of something, and then eliminate this existing parking that they've done by putting this little chain link fence. Most of these trailers do not fit in this area, so they're at an angle, and my lot is continuously tore up from vehicles driving in, pulling up, turning their tires and everything. So this is what I have to say, that this needs to be accessed from inside the park only, not off a Sea Otter Park or path. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else would like to speak in opposition to this application? Anyone in opposition? Seeing no one, I'll close the public portion of the hearing and allow Mr. Stillwell to respond.
Thank you. Within your packet is the site plan of the storage area. And if you look to that, you'll see the site-specific plan designates a total of 16 spaces. So if you approve this, the amount of storage that will occur there is 16 spaces. They are internal and they access through the park. The site-specific plan preserves the what I'll call wetland buffer, whatever you want to label it, so that's preserved. And then we install, and this is a choice, a type A buffer along South Sea Otter Path, or the alternative of a wall. And I apologize, someone with better eyes is going to have to tell me if that's a 6 or an 8.
6.
Okay. So, recognizing the concerns of the abutting neighbors, if you approve this, there's going to be 16 storage sites which will access internally through the park, and there'll either be a buffer or a wall. And if you want to make it 8, that's fine, along South Sea Otter Path, so that there'll be no, this historical access that they spoke to will be eliminated. The roadway down there at the corner of lot 32 accesses an abutting property. There's nothing we can do about that. There you have it.
Thank you.
They also talked about, is it
Joanna?
accessible to other people?
It's for the storage is for the
I know you said
park.
that, right. Condition number 4 talks about park amenities and recreational facilities limited to park residents and guests. And I could add, including the boat and trailer parking area, to make it clear that's not meant for people coming in off of wherever to park.
Correct. Any questions about the site plan?
No, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, based on Mr. Stillwell's comments, then a condition number, well, not number 7, we'll put it in the middle, but with the 6-foot-high solid panel fence as outlined on the site plan along Sea Otter next to the boat and trailer parking would be an additional condition.
I'd like to ask the applicant, Mr. Stillwell, are you okay with the conditions and the additional condition with a set fencing?
One point of clarification. Right now it reads either.
It says either or.
LDC buffer or a fence.
Correct, I apologize, it's whatever the board
Okay.
wants, yes.
Yeah, I heard, I heard the residents ask that your client be a little better neighbor, at 4 o'clock in the morning.
But frankly, for everyone's best for everyone, is the fence.
Yeah,
Because the buffer, half of the time it lasts 3 years, and then the
Right.
fence lasts.
no, I want what's best for everybody, including the people who
Right.
don't go to the park. Yeah. Okay. Other comments from the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Stone.
Mr. Stillwell, you did say that they would not object to an 8-foot-high fence, which may deaden more noise and suppress more headlights and lights at 2 o'clock in the morning, this would be acceptable?
Yes, sir, that's 100% okay, so.
Right.
Okay.
Right, so I would like the condition to pursue an 8-foot high fence instead of 6. And I guess I would like to see some sort of detail at the I guess swamp end of the fence, some sort of 3 or 4 foot little panel going out there, so these imaginative boaters who pull onto other people's lawns wouldn't make an end run around the fence through the swamp. Does that seem logical?
It's off their property, though. Mr. Stilwell? That's all right. Mr. Stone was talking about the fence and somebody being creative and trying to do an end around into the small marsh area. I think your fence would probably maybe have an end and not into the marsh, of course, but is that possible to do?
I'm thinking something like a 5-foot or 6-foot panel around that end. These people seem to be not very respectful of people's property.
The site plan shows the length of the fence would be the length that this 1 acre piece
Right.
attaches. The property, I'm going to say to the right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I don't know if it's north or south.
Yes, sir.
Not owned by my client.
No, I wouldn't want them to go off their property, or I wouldn't want them to go into the swamp. But if there is some dry ground between Sea Otter Path and the subject property boundary that runs,
Mr. Gibbs' site plan shows that the wetland area does not come all the way to Sea Otter.
so
Stops there. And there was sufficient room for the type A buffer. So if there's sufficient room for a type A buffer, the fence would be the length of this area along
Right.
South Sea Otter Path.
okay, that would be great. That would be great. I have nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments from the board?
I would just say I'm in favor of it with the conditions that we talked about. I mean, it's, I'm 100% understanding of the neighbors and their concerns. I believe that it sounds like their concerns have been heard and maybe some of them will be addressed. The long and short of it is if this particular RV park wasn't there and they came in front of us, it would not be allowed. Obviously, we wouldn't vote in favor of this. You're not going to put an RV park near residential, but that RV park has been there longer than I've been alive. So I think that just trying to be a good neighbor for the applicant and the owner would try and help. But at the end of the day, people trespass and people drive all over people's properties, and other people have no control of that. It's definitely not ideal, but the park was there. We put some safeguards in place with the conditions, and us changing this to make everything proper and not have non-conforming uses. I know that that's ideal for the county, and it works better for everyone. And whether we approve this or not, that's not going to affect any of the neighbors, their concerns. So I'm in favor of it with the conditions and the additional proposed.
I will be supporting this also.
Mr. Chair, I agree, and for the purpose of a motion,
Commissioner Worthington.
the Planning and Development Commission finds application number CPA/AA-PUD-22-02 consistent with the Citrus County Comprehensive Plan and Citrus County Land Development Code, and that this board recommends approval with conditions of the application to the Board of County Commissioners based upon the evidence and testimony presented and the staff report and conclusions regarding this petition.
I have a motion by Commissioner Worthington. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Bassett. Any additional discussion?
To clarify, you're talking about an 8-foot high solid panel fence along Sea Otter.
Correct.
8
Correct.
foot, not 6. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
And Mr. Chair, this will be heard by the County Commission on February 22nd.
Thank you. Is there any additional comments from staff?
Your next meeting, we have one very engineering-intensive variance. We'll have an engineering representative here, and I am very happy to give them all this engineering stuff to talk about. Otherwise, we do have a reorganization meeting where you'll elect a chair and 2 vice chairs as well. The meeting after that in February, we have 3 meetings, 3 applications. I appreciate y'all, first of all your deliberations. Thank you very much. You may not always agree with staff, but that's what you're here for, and we appreciate that. Also, thank you for telling us when you're not here. We do appreciate that. We had a last-minute cancellation, and Ms. Gregg was able to be here, so thank you for that.
Well, that begs a question that I had. What's the official process to report? For example, Commissioner Barnes had a last-minute reason to cancel. He had death in the family, untimely. Is Cheryl our go-to person?
She absolutely is your go-to person. She's my go-to person too, but yes, she is. And if you can't reach her, myself or Mr. Sherman certainly will help.
Okay. I was just wondering if Cheryl happened to be not working or on vacation or something like that. Who's the backup?
I won't let her do that.
Okay.
She pretty much runs the office.
No, I understand.
So mean.
No, very valuable.
We appreciate staff. We appreciate Cheryl. So, any other business for the good of the order? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Commissioner Bass. Second. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Commissioner Worthington, all in favor, say
Hey.
aye.
Aye.
See you all next time.